Ka'alau Yahweh Hashem Yahawashi by Hashem Rakakadash. All praise, honor, and glory go to the Most High Yahawah in the name of His Son, Yahawashi. And I'm back to you with another one. I wanted to come from the book of 1 Timothy 1 with all the, different doctrines out there being, coming to the forefront, trying to say there's going to be a rapture. We got women teaching on videos. A bunch of other things brothers have been bringing out. I wanted to just come with a lesson to try to get us, and myself, more focused on what we were supposed to be holding on to. For those that do follow the channel, I don't have a lot of followers, but I make it my duty and responsibility to try to do my best to be sincere in heart and bring out the truth according to the doctrine that I was taught, which is, brought from the man of the Lord of Great Millstone, and starting from Apostle Tahar on down. And one thing that I try to do, is if it's something that I may not fully understand just yet, because, I'm not in the camp or anything, but if it's something that hasn't been revealed to me through the Spirit, I hold off and I wait. I don't bring it out in a sense just to try to get something out there. I try to speak on things that, that I totally understand, I can grasp. Because, a lot of what's going on right now, people are just jumping on bandwagons and find this thing is just entertainment. It's something different from the ways of the world, and people are yearning for things that are different, but they have the wrong heart behind it because they're using it just for entertainment. You see a gathering of so-called African American, Native American, Latinos, and it made, I was watching this one video, sister was, like a goofball, I got this brother put on the video, and she was just laughing at this thing of ours, and she was, making fun of the names and everything, but in the end she said she loves us. So, we got a lot of different mindsets that are against this truth, because even if you're saying you love, but you trying to mock and make fun of what's going on, was really just, the Lord, because, she was, saying how you get that name, and, this is a faith-based ministry. If you're doing this, you're doing the work that you're called to do, able-bodied men, women and children, then this thing won't be a joke to you. It'll be serious. You'll be, even though we still go off, you won't feel great about going off. When you can't, when you don't feel that connection, because of something that you may have experienced or may have done, it's not going to feel great. It is going to be tough. It is going to be hard. The world is all around us, and those of the hopeful elect are going to understand this, and they're not going to be afraid. They're going to keep their confidence in what they've been taught, and they're going to continue to push on. And we see here in 1 Timothy 1, Paul, he wanted to make a charge that we stay away from these other doctrines, and that's the charge I'm giving today. Let's stay away from these other doctrines. Just a quick testimony before I get into the scripture. When you first come in, you may start watching everybody, but if you don't gravitate to the man of the Lord, you got the music side of it all, with IUIC and other brothers, other men that do the music. We have different names out there. Some people are still using the JC. So you got to give up all that stuff. Some of the music sounds good, but I had to give it up because a lot of, everyone who's doing music, and it's true, just keep it real with you, they're not using the true name, or they're not calling on Yahawashi and Yahawashi, you know. And the ones that I have come across, they're still thugged out. They're using it like it's it's the rap game. The ones using the name. So that's something that we have to get off of. Trying to just watch anybody, any camp, any, that's going off. You got to leave that alone. Trying to start your own thing without being in order and following the teachings of the men of the Lord, that's going off. Because he's already set up the prophets. So all these different avenues that you may try to touch upon or experience, it's going to lead you to going off. You got to be able to go through this suffering and pain and dealings of this of being stuck in this world, but called on Yahawashi and Yahawashi, and trust solely in him, and his son Yahawashi to deliver you. But you got to stand firm. You got to stand firm, and you got to be unwavering. So in verse 3, it says, "As I besought thee to abide still at Ephesus when I went into Macedonia, that thou mightest charge some that they teach no other doctrine." And that's what we see going on now, and that's is very dangerous. It's very dangerous to try to mix the truth with what the world tries to say is the truth. It says, "For neither give heed to fables and endless genealogies, which minister questions rather than godly edifying, which is in faith, so do." So, trying to get your a test to see if you are an Israelite from your heritage. Trying to connect the dots in an Esau way, using pseudoscience. He's giving us a warning not to do those things, because at the end of the day, this is a faith-based ministry. It says, "Now the end of the commandment is charity, so you should always be giving." If you're an able-bodied man, you should always want to be doing something for the Lord, mainly getting out this message so you can help wake up the hopeful elect. One thing I do a lot of shorts, but I gotta, do longer videos, more, My time is kind of, limited because of the things I do and how far I got to travel. But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter. I got to get back on the street corner. Even though it's just myself, I got to get out there. These are things that we got to do, because we're able to do it. And ultimately, I let the Spirit just lead me. If I'm not doing enough, then prayerfully, someone will let me know. But at the end of the day, we got to continue just to do what we were taught to do. It says, "Now the end of the commandment is charity, out of a pure heart." So you want to make sure you're pure. Like I said, let the Spirit be move you to do these things. It says, "And of a good conscience, and of faith unfeigned." That faith unfeigned, is really the basis of why we do the things we do, because we believe in what's going to come. We believe that when it comes, it's going to, pretty much change the world. Everybody's talking about change the world, change this, change America. The real changing of the world and is going to happen when Yahawashi returns. That's when everything is going to rearrange. Everything now is just going to continue to get more evil and worse. No matter who you are, where you're at, nothing's going to get better until Yahawashi returns. And you got to have faith in that until the end. It says in verse 6, and this is the point I wanted to really get to. It says, "From which some, having swerved, have turned aside unto vain jangling." You see? Now, how can you swerve? Well, you know the teachings. You have the direct teaching from the men of the Lord. You know what you're supposed to be doing, man, woman, child. Yet, you want to dabble here and there. You want to dabble into, what makes you feel good. Anything vain, anything that has no weight to it. You turn to that. See, verse 7, desiring to be teachers of the law, understanding neither what they say, nor whereof they affirm. But we know that the law is good if a man uses it lawfully. That's like them women, want to now be teachers, sitting in cars together like the brothers do, and doing videos, and it's evil, it's wicked. They're witches, and they don't even have the right name. The men of the Lord, the prophets, men who teach, we didn't wake up one day and say, oh Lord, let me teach. No. And I said, we are praying on that number. It was something that was a burning inside. It was like something that you felt. You could understand what was being taught. It was plain as day to you what's going to happen. And, you had that burning inside just to get out there and bring it out. It wasn't based upon anything that, in your own mind you wanted to do. And now that you're doing it, when you are doing it, it's something that you got to continue to do, and you want to continue to do, and you love to do because, you feel connected with the Lord. And there's no better place to be, especially in this world, than be connected with Yahawashi and Yahawashi. I'm going to get a couple precepts and get up out of here. I gave a roll to the plantation, but this is 1 Timothy 6:21. It says, For by professing it, some have swerved from the faith. Grace be with you. See, so stick with what you know. Stick with what you've been taught. Don't go outside the box. Don't go out on your own. When I mean go out on your own, I mean like a new form of teaching. Stay redundant with what you have been taught. Second Timothy 2:18 says, who have swerved from the truth, saying that the resurrection has already happened. They are upsetting the faith of some. You see, that's the whole, this whole rapture thing, trying to mix Christian ideology with this truth. Saying that there's not going to be any Jacob's trouble. There's a lot of different, people are going to have a lot of blood on their hands because, that they're really upsetting the faith of some. Everybody's not as strong to be able to stick to the true teachings. Yet at the same time, we know that if you're not strong enough to stick to it, most likely you're not part of the elect. So the Lord does it two ways. Hey, He sends these false prophets out to help swerve those that are not firm in the faith. But at the same time, those that are being used to help swerve someone that's not firm in the faith are going to be judged as well. First Timothy 5:15 says, for some have already strayed after Satan. You got a lot of people who still playing the part, still trying to say they're holding on, still saying they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but their heart is already after Satan because they want the world. He's the power of this world. He's given that over to the so-called white man, the nation of Edom, the elites of the nation of Edom, not just the common white man, but the elites that have all these different potions, remedies, and solutions, mainly leading up to that microseed. So when your heart is already strayed away, you're just setting yourself up to take that chip. Second Timothy 4:4 says, and will turn away from listening to the truth and wander off into myths because your heart is already turned. You don't believe, you don't have faith in this. You got to see, smell, touch, taste something for you to believe. You can't just have faith and believe that you will be delivered if you continue on this path and stick to this truth and do your part, do your work that you're called to do, every man, woman, and child. And this is two more scriptures. This is Titus 1:10. It says, "For there are many who are insubordinate, not wanting to follow direction, empty talkers, just speaking, not really thinking, and deceivers, really trying to get people to get strayed away from this truth, especially those of the circumcision party, especially for those that already have been touched by the Spirit, or by the grace, that really want to hold on to the law, teaching the law. Those are the ones that you really got to watch out for. They're not trying to be saved and be touched with the mercies of David. They think they already got it on point. And those are the ones you have to watch out for. And the last one is 1 Timothy 6:5. It says, "And constant friction among people who are depraved in mind." Why can't you just leave the men of the Lord alone? Why do you always have to try to make videos against them? Why do you always got to try to cause some kind of friction or combat? All the men of the Lord do is just defend the scriptures. But you want to come personally and attack them and come against the true teaching. It says, "Who are depraved in mind and depraved of the deprived of the truth, imagining that godliness is a means of gain." Those are the ones, like I said, that are doing it, the law, because they think it's some kind of gain from it. Either money, either following, people following them, power. They don't have their mind strictly on this truth. They have their mind strictly on their own pockets or their own gain. And it's all vain. This world is not getting no better. The only thing that's going to make it better is Yahawashi returning. You have to go through the suffering and the pain that everybody has to go through until that time so you can receive the kingdom. So instead of allowing yourself to fall for anything that's outside of the box of this truth, do the charity, do the work that you're called to do. Able-bodied men, continue to teach, continue to purify yourself, continue to pray, fast, get yourself together. The Day of Atonement is coming. Honor the holy days. Do the things that that show that you're practicing good deeds. You men who may not be able to teach, but you do believe in the name of Yahawashi, keep the prophet's name out your mouth. Stop scoffing and mocking. Stop being so critical about every last little thing. Keep your mind focused in on what the kingdom to come has to offer you. You women, always put your head first. I don't care if he's, if you live with your head, if you're away from your head, you want to put what he thinks first. If you have a man of the Lord on your side, if he's leading you into the kingdom, because at the end of the day, that order is what's going to get you right. And you children, keep the name of Yahawashi in your mouth. Don't follow those false names and what they teach you in the school system. And with that, just want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahawashi by Hashem or Kakadash. Double honors to all the apostles, the elders, the teachers, the preachers, the priests, the bishops that came before me, taught me this truth through the videos, starting with the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who are the true prophets of Yahawashi, taught by their apostles and elders before them. And Shalawam, which means peace be to you, to the holy elect, which I pray I'm of the number of. Till next time, Yahawah.